Have you ever felt like people take you for granted? Like no matter how much time, energy, or love you give, they don't seem to notice until it's gone. It's frustrating, isn't it? But what if I told you there's a way to flip the script? An approach so powerful that the moment you act on it, people can't help but miss you. That's what we're here to uncover today. Most of us are stuck in a cycle of overgiving, over-explaining, and overextending ourselves in relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional. We believe that by being constantly present, always available, always accommodating, we're building stronger connections. But here's the kicker: that's a lie. Being endlessly present doesn't increase your value, it often diminishes it. People stop seeing what makes you unique when you're always around. They assume your time and energy are endless, and the appreciation you deserve fades into the background. So what's the solution? It's simple but profound. Strategic absence. It's not about manipulation or playing games. It's about reclaiming your worth, setting boundaries, and creating space for others to truly value you. When you step back, when you prioritize yourself, something remarkable happens. They notice. They miss you. They realize your presence is a gift, not a given. In this video, we'll explore 6 transformative actions you can take to make others truly miss you, not in a superficial way, but in a manner that enhances respect, deepens relationships, and aligns with your personal growth. Stick around because the final point ties everything together, revealing how to re-engage with purpose and authenticity. Are you ready to discover how to command attention by stepping back? Let's dive in. 1. The power of absence. Why it works. Let's start with a simple truth. People often don't realize the value of what they have until it's gone. This isn't a criticism of human nature. It's simply how our minds work. It's not intentional, but familiarity has a way of dulling our appreciation. This is why absence, when used intentionally, has such a profound impact on how others perceive and value you. Have you ever found yourself wondering why someone only seems to truly appreciate you after you've pulled back? Why your absence leaves a stronger impression than your presence ever did? The answer lies in the psychology of scarcity. Humans are wired to notice and desire what feels rare or limited. When something is always accessible, it blends into the background. But when it's no longer within reach, it sparks curiosity, longing, and a renewed sense of appreciation. Absence, however, isn't about disappearing or ghosting people. It's an intentional and thoughtful creation of space. This space allows others to reflect on your presence and what it means to them. It's not about punishing anyone or playing games. It's about resetting the dynamic, making room for others to notice and value what they may have overlooked. Think about the last time someone you care about was less available than usual. Maybe they were traveling, busy with a new project, or simply taking time for themselves. How did it make you feel? You likely noticed their absence more than you ever noticed their presence. This is the paradox of absence. By stepping back, you allow others to step forward. The power of absence isn't limited to romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, family, and even professional dynamics. When someone is constantly present, whether as a friend, partner, or coworker, their contributions can become invisible. But when they take a step back, their absence creates a void that's impossible to ignore. To understand this more deeply, let's look at how the mind works. When something is always within our grasp, we stop noticing its details. It becomes part of the background noise of our lives. But when it's no longer immediately available, our brain shifts into high alert. We start to focus on what we're missing, imagining scenarios where we can regain what's been lost. This heightened attention is what makes absence so powerful. It forces the mind to engage in ways it doesn't when everything feels predictable. The question is, how do you use absence effectively in your own life? It starts with understanding where you're overextending yourself. Are you always the one initiating contact, making plans, or solving problems? Are you so readily available that people don't have to make an effort to connect with you? These patterns, while often well-intentioned, can lead to feelings of being taken for granted. Creating intentional space doesn't mean cutting people off or creating unnecessary drama. It's about finding moments to step back and let others take the lead. For example, if you're always the first to text, try waiting and letting someone else reach out. If you're the one constantly planning get-togethers, pause and see who steps up. These small shifts can have a profound impact on how others perceive your presence. Of course, stepping back can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to being actively involved in others' lives. You might worry that people will forget about you or that the relationship will suffer. But the opposite is often true. Absence doesn't weaken connections, it strengthens them by highlighting what makes those connections meaningful. It gives others the opportunity to reflect on the role you play in their lives and the value you bring. It's also important to recognize that not everyone will respond to your absence in the way you hope. Some people may not notice and others may resist the change. But this is valuable information in itself. Relationships that thrive only when you're constantly giving are not truly balanced. When you step back, you're creating space for the people who genuinely care about you to step forward. Absence also gives you the opportunity to reconnect with yourself. When you're constantly giving, it's easy to lose sight of your own needs and desires. Stepping back allows you to refocus your energy inward, prioritizing your own growth and well-being. And as you grow, your presence becomes even more valuable to those around you. Imagine you're a painter and every day you create beautiful art. If you hang your paintings in the same spot day after day, people might admire them at first, but eventually they'll stop noticing. Now imagine you remove those paintings for a while. The space where they once hung becomes noticeable, almost jarring. When you eventually return the paintings, they're seen with fresh eyes, and their beauty is appreciated all over again. This is the essence of absence. It creates space for renewed appreciation. So ask yourself, where in your life could you create intentional space? Is there a relationship where you're overextending? Are there patterns of behavior that have made your presence feel predictable? Reflect on these questions and think about small ways you can step back, not out of anger or frustration, but out of a desire to foster balance and mutual respect. The power of absence lies in its ability to shift perspectives. When you create space, you're not only giving others the chance to miss you, you're reminding yourself of your own value. You're stepping out of the background and into a place where your presence can truly be seen and appreciated. Remember, this isn't about manipulation or withholding love. It's about honoring your worth and inviting others to do the same. When you approach absence with intention and authenticity, it becomes a tool for strengthening relationships and deepening connections. It's not about creating distance for the sake of distance, it's about creating space for appreciation, reflection, and growth. As you begin to embrace the power of absence, notice how it shifts the dynamics in your relationships. Pay attention to how people respond when you're no longer constantly available. And most importantly, pay attention to how you feel. Are you more centered, more valued, more at peace? These are the signs that you're moving in the right direction. Let absence be your reminder. Your presence is a gift. It's not something to be given away freely or taken for granted. By creating intentional space, you're not only teaching others to appreciate you, you're also cultivating a deeper appreciation for yourself. 2. Set boundaries and prioritize yourself. Boundaries, that word alone can feel heavy, even uncomfortable for many of us. But let me ask you this. How often do you find yourself saying yes when you really mean no? How often do you sacrifice your own needs just to keep the peace, avoid conflict, or feel appreciated? If you've ever felt drained, unappreciated, or even resentful because of how much you give in relationships, this is where everything changes. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out, it's about showing them how to respect you. Think of boundaries as the invisible lines that define your personal space, your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being. Without them, people don't know where they stand, and you end up feeling stretched too thin. Here's the kicker. Boundaries aren't just good for you, they're essential for others to truly value you. When you set boundaries, you're saying, I matter, my time matters, my energy matters. And you know what? People respect that. They may not always like it at first, but in the long run, they'll respect you more for it. Let's dig deeper. Why is this so important? Because without boundaries, people don't see your limits. They assume your availability is endless, your patience is bottomless, and your time is there for the taking. It's not their fault, it's human nature. But here's the truth. When you set clear boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. You create a dynamic where your presence is appreciated rather than expected. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Won't I seem rude if I say no? Or what if they stop liking me if I pull back? But let's flip that around. If someone only values you when you're overextending yourself, is that real appreciation? Or are they just taking advantage of your kindness? Tough questions, but ones worth asking. Imagine this: you've been the person who always says yes, the one who's there at a moment's notice. Then one day you decide to step back. You say no to something you don't want to do. You prioritize your own plans over someone else's. At first it might feel uncomfortable for both you and them, but over time something shifts. They start to see you differently. They miss the version of you that was always available, but they also begin to respect the version of you that values yourself. So how do you start setting boundaries without alienating people? Let me break it down for you. First, get clear on your own limits. What are the things you're no longer willing to sacrifice? Is it your time, your emotional energy, your weekends? Write it down. Be specific. Clarity is the foundation of good boundaries. Second, communicate with confidence. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly or apologize for saying no. A simple, "I can't commit to that right now," or "that doesn't work for me," is enough. Practice saying it. The more you do, the easier it gets. Third, enforce your boundaries consistently. This is where many people struggle. They set the boundary but cave in when someone pushes back. Remember, a boundary is only as strong as your commitment to uphold it. Stand firm. It's not about being inflexible, it's about honoring yourself. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you set boundaries, you naturally create space. And in that space, something magical happens. People start to miss you. They begin to see you as someone who values their own time and energy, and that makes your presence more meaningful. You're no longer the person who's just there. You're the person whose time is a privilege to have. Ask yourself, what's stopping you from setting boundaries right now? Is it fear of rejection? A desire to be liked? Remember, people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries, even if it takes them some time to adjust. And those who don't, they were never really in your corner to begin with. Let me tell you a quick story. A friend of mine, let's call her Sarah, used to be a classic people pleaser. She was the one everyone called for help, advice, or a last-minute favor. And she always said yes, even when she didn't want to. One day, Sarah hit a breaking point. She was burned out, stressed, and felt like no one appreciated her. That's when she decided to make a change. She started setting boundaries. She stopped answering non-urgent messages immediately. She declined invitations she didn't genuinely want to accept. At first, people were surprised, some even upset. But over time, something incredible happened. Her relationships improved. The people who truly valued her started stepping up, making an effort, and respecting her time. And those who didn't, they faded away. Sarah wasn't just happier, she was finally surrounded by people who appreciated her for who she was, not just what she could do for them. Now it's your turn. Where can you start setting boundaries in your own life? Is it in a friendship where you feel taken for granted? At work, where you're constantly asked to go above and beyond without recognition? Or maybe it's in your family where you feel obligated to always say yes? Whatever it is, take that first step. You don't have to overhaul your life overnight. Just start small and build from there. Here's the bottom line. When you set boundaries and prioritize yourself, you're not being selfish, you're being self-respecting. And that respect, it's contagious. Others will follow your lead. And before you know it, you'll find yourself surrounded by people who truly value you. If you're still with me, I want you to pause for a moment. Reflect on this. What's one boundary you can set today that will bring you closer to the life you deserve? Think about it, and when you're ready, take action. Before we move on to the next transformative step, do me a quick favor. If you're finding value in this video, show some love by hitting the like button and commenting number 1 down below. Let me know if this resonates with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're ready for more life-changing insights like this, don't forget to subscribe. Your journey to a more confident, empowered you starts right here. 3. Step back. The art of distance. Let me ask you a question. How often do you find yourself feeling unappreciated, overlooked, or taken for granted? You give, you invest, you show up, yet the response doesn't match your effort. It's a painful realization, but one that can teach you a powerful truth. Sometimes, to be truly seen and valued, you have to step back. Stepping back isn't about disappearing or cutting people off, it's an art. It's about creating distance in a way that's intentional and meaningful, one that encourages others to reflect on your presence and recognize the value you bring. But why does this work? And how can you implement it without feeling like you're abandoning the people you care about? Let's unpack this concept step by step. Think for a moment about the relationships in your life. How many of them rely on your constant presence? How many people have grown so accustomed to you being there, whether physically, emotionally, or digitally, that they no longer truly notice you? It's not necessarily their fault. When something or someone is always available, we tend to take it for granted. It's human nature to assume that what is consistent will always remain. But here's the paradox. The very consistency that makes you reliable can also make you invisible. That's where the art of stepping back comes in. Imagine you're listening to your favorite song on repeat. At first, it's exhilarating. You feel every note, every lyric. But after the 10th, 20th, or 50th play, something changes. The magic fades. You stop noticing the details that made the song special in the first place. Now, imagine stepping away from that song for a month or two. When you hear it again, it hits differently. It feels fresh, vibrant, and meaningful once more. The same principle applies to relationships. When you're always available, people can lose sight of what makes you unique. But when you step back, even just slightly, you allow others to see you in a new light. You reintroduce novelty, and with it, a deeper appreciation for your presence. So how do you step back without causing harm or misunderstanding? Here are a few key strategies to consider. First, start with awareness. Stepping back isn't about punishing others or proving a point. It's about creating balance. Ask yourself, are you overextending in any relationships? Are you giving so much of yourself that it's leading to feelings of exhaustion, frustration, or resentment? If the answer is yes, it's time to recalibrate. Reflect on where you're overinvesting and where you might need to pull back, even just a little. Second, introduce distance gradually. This isn't about vanishing overnight. It's about creating subtle shifts that encourage others to notice your absence. For example, if you're someone who always initiates conversations, try pausing. Let others reach out to you instead. If you're constantly the one making plans, take a step back and see who steps up. These small changes can have a big impact on how others perceive your role in their lives. One powerful tool here is silence, not as a weapon but as a form of clarity. When you stop filling every moment with your words, actions, or presence, you allow space for others to step forward. Silence creates room for reflection, both for you and for the people around you. It's in that space that recognition and appreciation begin to grow. Third, focus on yourself. Stepping back isn't just about creating distance for others, it's about creating space for yourself to grow. When you step back from constantly attending to others' needs, you have more time and energy to invest in your own life. Pursue your passions. Learn a new skill. Reconnect with your goals and dreams. When you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you not only feel more fulfilled, but you also naturally become more attractive and magnetic to those around you. This shift isn't just about self-improvement, it's about shifting the dynamics of your relationships. When people see you prioritizing yourself, they're reminded that your time and presence are valuable. They begin to realize that being part of your life is a privilege, not a given. But here's the challenge. Stepping back often feels counterintuitive, especially if you're someone who cares deeply about maintaining close connections. You might worry that distance will push people away. And yes, it might temporarily. Some people may not understand your choice at first, especially if they're used to you always being there. But over time, something remarkable happens. Those who truly value you will step up. They'll reach out. They'll make an effort to bridge the distance, and in doing so, they'll remind you of your worth. Of course, not everyone will rise to the occasion, and that's okay. Stepping back isn't just about creating space for others. It's also about identifying who's truly invested in your life and who isn't. If someone drifts away when you step back, it's a reflection of their priorities, not your value. Letting go of those who don't appreciate you creates room for deeper, more meaningful connections with those who do. Now, let's talk about timing. When is the right moment to step back? The answer depends on your situation. Maybe it's when you start feeling taken for granted. Maybe it's when your presence no longer feels like a choice, but an obligation. Or maybe it's when you realize that you've been giving so much of yourself that there's little left for you. The key is to act with intention. Stepping back isn't about creating drama or forcing others to chase you. It's about reclaiming your time, energy, and sense of self. It's about reminding others and yourself that your presence is a gift, not a guarantee. Let me share a story to bring this concept to life. There was a man named David who was always the fixer in his friend group. Whenever someone had a problem, David was the first to show up. He'd cancel his plans, drop everything, and do whatever it took to help. At first, his friends were grateful, but over time they started to take him for granted. They expected David to always be there, and they stopped appreciating his efforts. One day, David decided to step back. He didn't announce it or make a big deal about it. He simply stopped overextending himself. When a friend called with yet another crisis, David offered support, but didn't drop everything to solve the problem. When someone canceled plans at the last minute, he didn't rush to reschedule. Instead, he focused on his own life, his hobbies, his goals, his well-being. At first, his friends were confused. Some even seemed upset. But over time, something shifted. The friends who truly valued David started reaching out, not because they needed something, but because they missed his presence. They started showing up for him, just as he had always shown up for them. And the friends who didn't, they faded away. David's story is a testament to the power of stepping back. It's not about abandoning the people you care about. It's about giving them the opportunity to step forward and show that they care about you too. So what about you? Where in your life do you feel the need to step back? Is it in a friendship where you're always the one making an effort? In a romantic relationship where your needs are being overlooked? Or in a family dynamic where you've taken on too much responsibility? Whatever it is, remember this. Stepping back isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's an act of self-respect that allows others to truly see and appreciate your worth. And when you do step back, don't be afraid of the silence it creates. In that silence, there's room for reflection, for growth, and for transformation. There's room for people to realize what your presence means and to miss you when you're not there. Stepping back is an art, and like any art, it takes practice. But once you master it, you'll find that the relationships in your life become stronger, more balanced, and more fulfilling. Because when people miss you, they don't just long for your presence, they begin to cherish it. 4. Shift your focus to self-improvement. Let's get real for a moment. How often do you lose yourself in the lives of others? You pour your energy into relationships worrying about whether they like you, whether they'll stay, or whether you're doing enough to keep them around. But here's the thing. When was the last time you focused that same energy on yourself? When did you last ask, am I growing? Am I thriving? Am I happy? This might sting a little, but it's a truth we can't ignore. The more you prioritize others over yourself, the more likely they are to take you for granted. Why? Because people are naturally drawn to those who exude confidence, purpose, and growth, and you can't exude those qualities if you're constantly neglecting your own development. Now, let me ask you this. What would happen if, instead of fixating on how others see you, you shifted your focus inward? What if you started investing in your own self-improvement, not to impress anyone else, but to become the best version of yourself? Imagine the ripple effect that would create, not just in how others perceive you, but in how you perceive yourself. When you shift your focus to self-improvement, something incredible happens. you become magnetic. Your energy changes. You start to glow with a sense of purpose, and people can't help but notice. But the best part, you're no longer chasing their validation because you're too busy building a life that excites you. Let's break this down. What does self-improvement really mean? It's not about perfection or endless hustle. It's about growth. It's about identifying the areas of your life where you feel stagnant and taking steps to reignite your spark. And the beauty of this journey is that it looks different for everyone. Maybe for you, self-improvement means focusing on your health, getting stronger, eating better, and feeling more energized. Maybe it's about developing a new skill like learning a language, starting a creative project, or mastering a hobby you've always been curious about. Or maybe it's about deepening your emotional intelligence, learning to communicate more effectively, setting healthier boundaries, or letting go of past hurts. Whatever it looks like, the goal is the same: to grow, to evolve, to become someone you're proud of, not for anyone else, but for yourself. But here's the question that trips so many people up. How do you find the time and energy to focus on self-improvement when life already feels overwhelming? The answer lies in the choices you make every day. First, reclaim your time. Think about how much time you spend scrolling through social media, watching TV, or saying yes to things you don't really want to do. What would happen if you redirected just a fraction of that time towards something that fuels your growth? Maybe it's 30 minutes of exercise, 15 minutes of journaling, or an hour of reading a book that inspires you. Small changes compound over time, and the results can be life-changing. Second, embrace discomfort. Growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone, it happens when you challenge yourself. So ask yourself, what's one thing you've been avoiding because it feels too hard, too scary, or too uncertain? Maybe it's having a difficult conversation, pursuing a dream you've been putting off, or stepping out of your routine to try something new. Whatever it is, lean into the discomfort. That's where transformation begins. Third, celebrate your progress. Self-improvement isn't about achieving some grand end goal, it's about the journey. Every step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. So when you finish that book, complete that workout, or simply show up for yourself in a way you didn't before, take a moment to celebrate. Progress, not perfection, is what matters most. But here's where the magic happens. As you grow, people will start to notice. They'll see the changes in your energy, your confidence, and your sense of purpose. They'll miss the version of you who was always available to cater to their needs, but they'll also feel inspired by the version of you who's thriving. And that's the sweet spot, when your self-improvement not only enhances your life but also elevates the dynamics of your relationships. Let me give you an example. There's a woman I know, we'll call her Emma, who used to center her entire life around her partner. She put her dreams on hold, always prioritized his needs over her own, and slowly lost touch with who she was. One day, after yet another argument about feeling unappreciated, Emma decided to make a change. She didn't confront her partner or demand more from him. Instead, she focused on herself. Emma signed up for a painting class she'd always wanted to try. She started going to the gym and rediscovered her love for hiking. She even set aside time each week to journal and reflect on her goals. At first, her partner didn't know what to make of it. He was used to Emma being completely available to him, but over time something shifted. He started to see her in a new light, not just as his partner, but as a vibrant, passionate individual. And the more Emma grew, the more her partner stepped up to meet her energy. Emma's story isn't unique. The moment you start investing in yourself, the dynamics of your relationships change. People begin to see your value, not because you're demanding it, but because you're embodying it. So how can you start this journey today? Begin by asking yourself one powerful question. What do I want? Not what others expect from you, not what will make someone else happy, but what do you want? Maybe it's more confidence, more creativity, more fulfillment. Whatever it is, write it down. Let it be your North Star as you take small, consistent steps toward your growth. And as you go, remember this: self-improvement isn't selfish, it's essential. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't show up fully for others if you're not showing up for yourself. So give yourself permission to grow. Invest in your dreams, your passions, and your well-being. Not because you need to prove anything to anyone, but because you deserve it. Before we wrap up this part, let's take a moment to reflect. What's one area of your life where you've been neglecting your growth? Is it your health, your passions, your emotional well-being? Whatever it is, commit to taking one small step forward today. And when you do, notice how it feels. Notice how your energy shifts and how that shift begins to ripple into your relationships. If this part of the video resonated with you, show some love by hitting the like button and dropping a number 1 in the comments. Your voice matters, and I'd love to hear how you're planning to invest in yourself. And if you're finding value in these insights, make sure to subscribe so you never miss out on more ways to grow and thrive. Your journey is just beginning, and I'm honored to be part of it. Let's keep going together. 5. The emotional impact of absent signals. Let's take a moment to explore something deeper. Those subtle, often unspoken actions that make others stop and think about your presence in their lives. These are what we'll call absent signals. They're not grand gestures or overt declarations. Instead, they're the quiet shifts that speak louder than words. And while they may seem insignificant, their impact can be profound. Absent signals are subtle changes in how you interact with the people around you. They're the pauses in your responses, the moments when you don't rush to fill the silence, the space you create by pulling back just enough to let others feel the difference. When done with intention, these signals have the power to evoke curiosity, longing, and a renewed appreciation for your presence. But why do they work? The human mind is a strange thing. We're wired to notice changes in patterns, especially when those changes disrupt what we've come to expect. Think about the last time someone close to you altered their behavior. Maybe they stopped texting as frequently, or they seemed less available for a while. Chances are you noticed immediately. You might have wondered what was going on, or even started to miss the connection you had taken for granted. That's the power of absent signals. They're not about playing games or being manipulative. They're about creating space for reflection and connection. Consider this. When you're constantly present, always available, and endlessly accommodating, your presence becomes predictable. It blends into the rhythm of someone else's life to the point where they no longer truly see you. Absent signals disrupt that rhythm. They introduce a sense of unpredictability, a pause that makes people take notice. And in that pause, they start to reflect on what your presence means to them. The beauty of absent signals lies in their simplicity. You don't need to make dramatic changes or distance yourself completely. Instead, it's about being intentional with how you show up. For instance, if you're someone who always replies to messages immediately, try waiting a little longer before responding. If you're the one who usually plans outings or initiates conversations, step back and let others take the lead. These small shifts can have a big emotional impact, often sparking a sense of curiosity and appreciation in others. But there's a delicate balance here. Absent signals are not about withholding affection or creating unnecessary tension. They're about inviting others to engage with you more intentionally. When used with the right mindset, they create opportunities for deeper, more meaningful connections. It's important to recognize that not everyone will respond to absent signals in the same way. Some people might immediately notice and reach out, while others may take longer to process the change. And then there are those who might not respond at all. This can be difficult, especially if you've invested a lot in a relationship, but it's also revealing. If someone doesn't notice or respond to the space you create, it may be a sign that the relationship isn't as balanced or reciprocal as you hoped. Absence signals also have a profound impact on how you see yourself. By creating intentional space, you're reminding yourself that your time and energy are valuable. You're stepping out of the habit of overextending and into a space of self-respect. This shift can be empowering, helping you cultivate a sense of confidence and independence that radiates outward. There's also a psychological principle at play here, the idea that scarcity increases value. When something is readily available, we tend to take it for granted. But when it becomes less accessible, we start to crave it. Absence signals tap into this principle in a way that feels natural and authentic. By creating moments of scarcity, you allow others to see the value of your presence more clearly. Imagine this scenario. You're always the first to reach out to a friend, making plans and checking in regularly. One day you decide to take a step back. You don't disappear completely, but you wait for them to initiate contact. At first, they might not notice the change, but as time goes on, they start to feel the difference. They realize how much they've come to rely on your efforts, and they begin to miss the connection you've always nurtured. In that absence, they're reminded of your value. This principle applies to all types of relationships: romantic, platonic, and professional. In a romantic relationship, absence signals can rekindle a sense of excitement and mystery. In friendships, they can encourage mutual effort and reciprocity. In the workplace, they can shift the dynamics of how your contributions are perceived. The key is to approach these signals with sincerity and purpose, rather than as a strategy to manipulate or control. It's also worth noting that absence signals are most effective when combined with genuine self-improvement. When you create space and use that time to focus on your growth, the changes in your energy and outlook become even more noticeable. People are naturally drawn to those who are confident, self-assured, and committed to their own development. By stepping back and focusing on yourself, you're not only creating space for others to miss you, you're also elevating the value of your presence. As you explore the concept of absence signals, ask yourself this: where in your life could you create more intentional space? Is there a relationship where you feel overlooked or underappreciated? Are there patterns of behavior that have become so predictable that they no longer spark connection? Reflect on these questions and think about how small, deliberate changes could shift the dynamics in a positive way. Absence signals are not about playing hard to get or testing people's loyalty. They're about honoring your worth and inviting others to do the same. When used thoughtfully, they have the power to transform your relationships, creating a deeper sense of mutual respect and appreciation. And as you cultivate this balance, you'll find that the people who truly value you will step forward, while those who don't will naturally fade away. Let this be a reminder: your presence is a gift. It's not something to be taken for granted or given away indiscriminately. By embracing the art of absence signals, you're not only teaching others to appreciate your worth, you're also strengthening your connection with yourself. And that, above all, is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. 6. The comeback. Reengage with purpose. Let's face it, stepping back isn't the hard part. The real challenge comes when it's time to re-engage. How do you return to a relationship or situation after creating space without losing the progress you've made? How do you ensure that your renewed presence is met with respect, appreciation, and authenticity? This is where everything comes together, the moment when you step forward with purpose and intention. The art of re-engagement is subtle but transformative. It's not about rushing back in as if nothing has changed. It's about showing up as the evolved version of yourself, a person who values their time, energy, and boundaries. And when you do this effectively, something remarkable happens. Others begin to meet you at your new level. Re-engaging with purpose starts with clarity. Ask yourself, why are you stepping back into this relationship or situation? What has changed since you created space? What are you bringing to the table now? And what do you expect in return? These are not selfish questions, they're essential. Without clarity, it's easy to fall back into old patterns, undoing all the growth you've achieved. When you decide to reconnect, do so with confidence. Confidence isn't about arrogance or making grand declarations. It's about being grounded in your own worth. When you approach relationships from this place, you naturally command respect. Others can sense the shift in your energy, and they'll respond accordingly. One of the most powerful ways to re-engage is through intentional communication. Be open and honest about the space you've created and why it was necessary. This doesn't mean you need to explain yourself in exhaustive detail. A simple, heartfelt statement like, "I've been taking some time to focus on myself, and I feel more centered now," can set the tone for a healthier dynamic moving forward. Re-engagement is also an opportunity to reset expectations. If you've historically been the one to overextend, this is your chance to establish new patterns. Be mindful of how much you give and what you're willing to tolerate. remember you're not obligated to return to the way things were before. This is your moment to shape the relationship in a way that aligns with your values and needs. Let me share an example. A man named James had always been the go-to person in his circle of friends. Whenever there was an issue, James was the fixer. But after years of feeling drained and underappreciated, he decided to take a step back. During that time, he focused on his passions, picking up photography, traveling, and reconnecting with himself. When James decided to reconnect with his friends, he didn't jump back into his old role. Instead, he approached his relationships with a new mindset. He communicated his boundaries clearly and focused on building connections that felt mutual and balanced. And you know what? His friends noticed the change. They started to respect his time and efforts in a way they hadn't before. The key takeaway here is this: re-engagement is not about proving yourself to others. It's about showing up as the best version of yourself and inviting others to do the same. And if they don't, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their capacity to meet you where you are. As you step back into relationships or situations, pay attention to how people respond. Do they respect your boundaries? Do they appreciate the effort you're making? Are they willing to meet you halfway? The answers to these questions will reveal a lot about the strength and authenticity of your connections. And if someone isn't able to rise to the occasion, it's okay to let go. Growth sometimes means outgrowing relationships that no longer serve you. Re-engaging with purpose also means being patient. Not everyone will immediately understand or appreciate the changes you've made. Some may need time to adjust to the new version of you. That's okay. Stay consistent in your actions, and over time, they'll either adapt or drift away. Either outcome is a win because it aligns with the healthier, more balanced life you're building. One important aspect of re-engagement is gratitude. When you reconnect with people who truly value you, take the time to express your appreciation. Let them know you see their efforts and that you value the connection you share. Gratitude doesn't diminish your boundaries, it strengthens them by fostering a sense of mutual respect and care. Re-engaging with purpose is not about demanding more from others, it's about setting a higher standard for yourself and inviting others to rise to meet it. It's about creating relationships that are rooted in respect, appreciation, and genuine connection. As you think about how to apply this in your own life, ask yourself, what do I want my relationships to feel like? What kind of energy do I want to bring into my connections? And what am I willing to let go of to create space for something better? These are not easy questions, but they're essential for building a life that aligns with your values and goals. Now, let's make this actionable. Think of one relationship or situation where you've created space. What's your next step for re-engagement? How can you show up with purpose, authenticity, and a commitment to honoring your growth? Write it down. Visualize the outcome you want. And when you're ready, take that step with confidence. If this part of the video resonated with you, let me know by hitting the like button and commenting number 1 below. Your voice matters, and I'd love to hear how you plan to re-engage with purpose in your own life. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. This channel is all about empowering you to create stronger, more fulfilling relationships, and I'd love for you to be part of this community. Let's bring this all together. Throughout this journey, we've uncovered the transformative power of stepping back, setting boundaries, focusing on self-improvement, and creating intentional space in your relationships. These principles are not just about making others miss you, they're about reshaping how you see yourself and how others see you. They're about cultivating a life of mutual respect, deeper appreciation, and meaningful connection. The truth is, people will miss you the moment you recognize and honor your own value. When you stop chasing validation and start creating balance, you send a powerful message. Your time, your energy, and your presence are not infinite resources to be taken for granted. They're gifts, and gifts by their very nature are precious. As you step into this new mindset, remember that the power lies in your intention. Absence is not about manipulation or creating tension, it's about fostering clarity and connection. Boundaries are not walls, they're bridges that lead to healthier, more respectful relationships. And self-improvement is not selfish, it's essential for living a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. Ask yourself this: What kind of life do you want to create? What kind of relationships do you want to nurture? The answers to these questions will guide you as you implement these principles. They'll remind you to step back when needed, to hold firm to your boundaries, and to continuously invest in your growth. And here's the beauty of it all. The people who truly value you will rise to meet you. They'll notice your absence, respect your boundaries, and be inspired by your growth. And those who don't, they'll fade away, leaving room for connections that align with your worth and your journey. Before we close, I want to thank you for being part of this conversation. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on how you can apply these principles in your own life. Whether it's setting a boundary, stepping back from a draining dynamic, or committing to your own self-improvement, remember that change starts with small, intentional actions. If you found this video valuable, let us know by hitting the like button and commenting #1 below. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or your next steps. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe to join this community of growth and transformation. Together, we're building lives and relationships that feel balanced, fulfilling, and deeply authentic. Thank you for watching, and remember, the way you value yourself sets the tone for how others value you. Keep growing, keep creating space for what matters, and keep moving toward the life you deserve. Until next time, take care and stay true to yourself.